What does leadership look like when algorithms outthink human intuition? And how do we hold on to identity when our future paths are increasingly drafted by machines we can't fully command? In this episode, we explore what AI means not just for work, but for the people doing the work. Hey, welcome to AI Revolution Digest, where businesses get smarter. I'm Jocelyn, and I'm going to show you how AI drives real results. And because the future is awaiting, let's dive right in. Today we have our Professor Karoline Strauss. Thank you for being here. Can you tell our listeners who are you and what is it that you do?
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Justin. So I'm a professor of management at ESSEC Business School, and it's actually just been my 10-year anniversary at ESSEC. So as of August, I've been there for 10 years. And I'm an organizational psychologist by background. So I'm really interested in people issues in organizations, anything that has to do with leadership and motivation and well-being at work. These are my kinds of topics.
Thank you so much for being here. And in terms of organization and AI, it's just disrupting everything. Every time you look at the news, people are just saying, I'm getting laid off, or consulting won't be there anymore because AI will just do all these jobs. So when I talk to people, it's often that they're demoralized. And as someone who's going to enter the market, the real world, people are just around me saying there's a lot of unemployment. So my first question is for young people like myself who's going to the workforce where it seems to us that our skill set is often outdated or it's something that AI can do. In what ways can we deal with it right now?
Yeah, that's right. So I think we're maybe just starting to see some of that. So I think there's kind of two different things going on, right? There's the reality of what's really happening in the labor market. And then there is what we kind of see in the news and in the media. And that's the latter part seems a lot more sensationalist, right? And it's a lot more gloomy. And so every week there's a sort of a new terrible story coming out, how unemployment rate is going to be 20% by 2030. So it seems scary, right? And so totally understandable that young people feel they have to figure out how they still fit in. And I think the fact that we don't know for sure what the future is going to look like makes that even harder. So one of the things that I study and have actually been studying for 15 years or so, I've been doing this for a long time, is how people imagine that their future will look like. So their future selves, who we think we will become. And so this AI revolution is having a kind of quite an important impact on what people imagine the future will look like. But I also find that having an idea of who you want to be can also kind of buffer the effects of AI.
So when you said that AI can somehow buffer the effects, what does it mean exactly for young people?
Yes, it's almost the other way around, right? So we did a study, we did it with a young German researcher at the Technical University of Munich. And we were actually meeting to talk about another research project we were going to do. But this was when ChatGPT had just come out. And he was so excited about it. And it's all he wanted to talk about. And he showed it to me for the first time in that meeting. And we both got very excited. It was like, oh, we should do a study on that. This is what we need to study. We need to study what happens when people first use it and they first start to make sense of, wow, what does that mean for the future of my career? And so we recruited people who hadn't used it before, and we made them use ChatGPT for the first time in our study. And then we looked at how that affects how much in control they feel of their future career, and also what they're trying to do to kind of prepare for the future career in terms of networking or developing skills, seeking advice, and so on. And we find that people who start off with kind of quite a clear vision of what they want their future to look like, they manage to kind of stay more optimistic in the face of AI, so they feel less threatened. And people who are already not so sure of who they want to become, it kind of becomes this downward spiral, while they then also feel like less in control if AI is kind of coming for their jobs. And then they're even less likely to develop skills and to prepare. So it's kind of the winners continue to win and the losers kind of on this downwards trajectory.
I didn't realize that because I remember when I was at least younger, we always have these career festivals when you're young and people ask you what you want to be when you grow up. And I think we often attach our identity with our jobs. So it's like when you lose that job, you somehow lose that identity. And when you said what's important, where when you don't know who you want to become, it's really easy to be lost in all this AI because every time you look at the news, people are just going to say your jobs are going to be eaten by AI or there's no point in researching because AI knows all the research. But I guess it misses the point that research is creating something new. It's not recycling what has been done. So thank you. So my question is, middle managers, they often have this identity already in place that they're a manager of this huge company. So when AI somehow threatens or questions their authority in a way, because
Mm.
their skill set that they lack or they didn't go through training, it's now more pronounced because AI can see the metrics on what you're good at and what you're not. So my question is, if you're, let's say, a middle manager, what are the issues these employees often face when they want to upskill? Because there's a lot of research that shows that if you're an executive or the higher you go up the career ladder, the more they're not open to reskilling themselves, or they say things like, oh, why is HR telling me how to do my job? I've been here for like 10 years, or nobody knows about AI more than you do. Like we all know it the same way because it's still new. So as an HR professional or someone who's been deep in the research and organizational change, what ways do we encourage not just middle managers, but executive or everyone to be more open to reskilling?
Yeah. So let's see, a couple of things to unpack there. One is, I'm not sure if kind of older employees are less open to learning about AI. I find in some studies, we have recent paper where we again looked at the impact of AI on how optimistic people feel about their career. And I actually find that students are less optimistic than people who are already working. And so what we think one possible reason for that might be that when you're already in a job, you can kind of see the potential and you're seeing more this kind of augmentation part of it, while maybe students are more deeply steeped in this anxiety about, oh, what's the future going to look like? Where am I going to find my place in the world? So I'm often surprised by how optimistic people are about the impact that AI is going to have on their career and how kind of they seem to feel by and large quite positive about it. I'm wondering if there's a bit of a kind of self-serving bias in that a little bit, where I think if we think about like, I will be fine, right? My skills are very valuable, but this other person who has the same job, they might be in trouble. So I sometimes wonder a little bit about that. And then in terms of people, how can we get people to learn and to prepare? So I always struggle a little bit with this idea that people are naturally resistant to change or not willing to learn. I think when we're asking people to do things that don't pay off immediately, but in the future, you need kind of 3 different components to be in place. You need them to have a reason to do it, right? So is there a compelling enough reason for why they should do it that is relevant and meaningful to them? And even in sort of change management models, we often start off by, is there a sense of urgency through which you can bring people on board? And that needs to be something that, is positive for them, right? And that is maybe it's not just like, it's going to, create more value for the shareholder, but what does it mean for you personally? It's kind of meaningful. So you need to have a reason to. You also need to have can do, right? So you need to feel that you have all of the resources to do it, that you feel confident enough to do it. So that's the second factor. And then the third one is kind of a bit of energized too. So often when we bring about change or we invest in behaviors where we don't see the immediate payoff, but they're only going to pay off at some point in the future, that also needs to be fueled by kind of high energy emotion that comes from kind of enthusiasm or excitement. So maybe it's that one of these 3 factors is not in place. So maybe none of them.
It's really going to be difficult. Like, for example, in a traditional company, when they look at HR, they often see it as a cost center. So they often push HR to do incentives that see results very fast. So it can just be higher pay, but then it's difficult for people to skill themselves for their future. Because I think naturally it's our fault that it's not the default for us to think in the future. I think it's our default to just think more short term. And I think I don't know. I think it has something more to do with the company, I believe. If the company is more long-term oriented and they're willing to invest skills in their employees, I guess another thing would be maybe it's how the job market is in different countries. Like, for example, in the US, people can just job hop. So if I'm an HR officer, I'll think, hey, this person won't stay in the job for more than a year. Why would I invest in you? Unless, let's say in the EU, I believe, especially in Germany, there's a lot of people that just stay in one company for a longer period of time. So there is I think a rotational structure. So you feel that you're getting invested in, that the company is generally interested in your future, and it's one of your points, right? Like you need to feel that you can do the job and people care that I succeed. So I think that's one of the things the EU or somehow in the job market allows that. But for the Americans, they can be fired at will. And also in Asia as well, we somehow follow that. Unless you're in Japan, Japan is different. But Philippines market, Singapore market, it's kind of like US. That's why when I ask these questions, I'm more biased towards managers thinking in the short term. So my
Right.
question now is, as employees entering those markets, let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're American or you're in Asia, knowing that this is the job market or the culture that you can be fired at will if you don't show results, how do you like give yourself the ability to learn, knowing that you always have this fear that I can just be fired at will?
Yeah. You think that wouldn't that make you kind of almost more motivated to kind of develop your skills and prepare for the future? Because you're kind of thinking of your employability more broadly, right? It sort of kind of keeps that an important factor rather than thinking, oh, this is a job for life. I now kind of I'm gonna stay in this company. So I'm not sure about sort of specific studies or data on that, but my sense would be that if you're investing in kind of your future self, that does not necessarily need to be bound to a specific organization. So maybe you're thinking about, I might not be here, but I might be elsewhere. If I'm investing in these skills, they might travel with me. I think that's maybe the power of having this vision of who you want to become that isn't tied to like a specific job title or a specific organization, but it is more about who you want to be and the kind of work you want to do. Then that kind of travels with you a bit more.
I think it's important because now that we have all these giant layoffs with the tech companies, it's more pronounced that I felt like I lost my identity. Or, for example, I think the head of AI in Meta, he was fired by his own creation. Like he created an AI for Meta. Then Meta just decided, you know what? You have this AI. Thank you for working and you're just out. So the head of AI can be kicked out in a way by his own creation. So I'm just thinking on in terms of innovation. Example, you're a tech person. Are you incentivized to innovate, knowing that your creation can somehow backfire towards you, or I don't know, people will just suddenly withhold secrets from each other, knowing that hey, if I say something, it might come back after me. So with all this AI, I often hear news on how it brings innovation, but
Mm-hmm.
does it really always bring innovation, or is there instances where it can actually withhold it?
Yeah, so what you're kind of describing is that people aren't sharing knowledge because they almost worry that they will kind of design them or innovate themselves out of a job. So my sense is it's not, maybe that's not happening to a lot of people, but it's certainly conceivable. Yeah, does AI always lead to innovation? That's a good question. You might have recently seen, there's been recently quite a bit of buzz because there was a recent MIT report that actually showed that so many AI projects fail. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah. And you can say about that report what you will. Yes, it's based on, I think, 50 interviews and some 300 use cases and so on. And, you know, who knows if that's the complete picture and so on. But yeah, I'm wondering if this is what we talked about earlier, this kind of the reality of it on the ground, and then the way that that is presented in kind of how we talk about the future of work and what the future will bring.
I think my question now is, since we're both at ESSEC Business School,
Yeah.
we're business schools, we're supposed to teach students like myself how to be
Mm-hmm.
managers. So we have all these AI tools. Some professors are very open with AI that, okay, I
Yeah.
can allow you to use AI as long as you acknowledge it, that you used it and you think critically that this is what AI said, but I can say whatever I
Mm-hmm.
think. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily it's right, but I have a different point of view to what AI just told me. And there are some professors that are very more of a purist or traditional, saying that
Mm-hmm.
AI is somehow a secret knowledge that they don't want their students to use, which, okay,
Yeah.
my question is,
Mm-hmm.
let's say education in middle school, because of course,
Mm-hmm.
university, high school, I use it for everything, for research, and because it helps me brainstorm. But it's
Mm-hmm.
say, how does this impact kids? Because, for example, with AI, we know whether or not that thing was real, in a sense that we live in a world before AI was there. But I can imagine as a young kid seeing all these AI images, I might be confused of what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do we
Yeah.
change education? I think that's my point. It's
Mm.
with AI.
Yeah.
Needs to change in education? Because I remember when we have all this quiz or essays, people would
Mm-hmm.
just chat. to just because
Yes.
we're lazy.
I know, it's so tricky. But, you know, professors like we are, this is a big shift for us, right? So I think let's maybe start with that, and then we could move to the kids. Thinking about students, right? So on the one hand, we want to prepare our students for a world in which they likely use AI tools, but then on the other hand, what AI tools are really great at is to get you to the end of the process, right? To get you to the output. But then a lot of the learning happens as you're trying to kind of get there, and then the struggle, and then trying to make sense, and then being a bit confused, and then try sort of, you know, having to pull things together yourself. This is where the learning happens, and it's slow, and it's frustrating, and it feels a bit painful. And so I can see how it's super tempting, right? To just like, I'll just get to the end, and here's what I've been asked to do. And now I've written this text and I'm handing it over to the professor. I'm like, well, now you've missed out on the learning part, right? So I think it's less of a question of being old fashioned and more of a concern about how do we protect your learning? How do we make sure that students on the one hand become competent at using AI tools, but then still have these experiences and kind of unfortunately like the struggle of trying to figure things out themselves that will result in learning. And I think we're still all trying to figure that out together. And I think we're making it's actually quite difficult for students to understand what they... Yeah, no worries. So I think it's difficult for students to determine that themselves, right? And to essentially kind of constantly resist the temptation to take a shortcut that, you know, may or may not be detected and saves lots and lots of time, but instead to sort of say like, oh, I'm going to prioritize. And this is again sort of like a future...
Yeah, I can hear you now. So
yeah,
I think
again.
our point was resist the temptation for kids or kids.
Yeah, but so it's a lot. It's really hard, right? It's like a lot to ask to say resist the temptation. So I think that maybe we need to be a little bit more active and maybe even sort of a little bit descriptive, prescriptive as the experts on learning to say like, oh, use it for this, don't use it for that. And I think at the moment we're kind of saying, oh, use it responsibly, you figure it out, you know, make sure you think critically, good luck. So maybe we need to help students a little bit more to sort of determine what should I use it for and what should I use it for? What do you think? What should the role of professors be in this?
I think it's learning is just what you said. It's difficult. It's slow. And I guess we're now living in a world where it's more fast paced, where we're just more pressured to do results, not just in academics, but more in the real world. And the reason why I'm asking this question, because if we're struggling this in the academic sphere, what more in the job where managers will be at the back saying, hey, I want this output at this time. Just talk to any investment banker. Like, you would know how they're always stressed on getting. So I believe we're more of an output-based world where we have so much assignments, and even we have so much assessments that somehow it overwhelms us. So as a student, I can say this is our way to somehow protect our sanity. In a sense that if I can let AI just do one of those boring tasks that it doesn't seem important to me, it's just boring. So it's not creative enough for me. So I'm not going to be engaged. So I guess as a student, I want to be more engaged in the material that's more interesting for me. So back to your point is if you want to learn something, you need to be passionate about it somehow. But as a student, it's not possible to be passionate about everything. If you're passionate about all subjects, you're not passionate at all. So I guess I can be very good at some subjects that I really want, like HR or finance. But if it goes to something like marketing, I don't see myself. Remember, we talk about future identity. I don't see myself in the shoes of a marketer or doing PR or sales. So perhaps I'll just use the AI those tasks for marketing class. But if I'm more into HR research, I'm more willing to put on the pain because it's something that matters more to me. So I guess as a student, it's not that we're lazy or we don't want engagement in class. I guess AI just gives it more pronounced on what students want at the individual level, that I just prefer these subjects more. It's nothing to do with the teacher, nothing to do with the way they assess us. So I guess I would say for our education, perhaps we need to be more specialized. Because I remember in the job market, they won't hire you as a general business admin. They often hire you as an HR officer or in your finance or sales. So I guess at a young age, we can have just like 1 year of general subjects to know what he wants, and perhaps just specialize on the subjects you really are interested in. So if you're interested in marketing, then you do market research. Or if you're in finance, you just do more finance competition. So I guess I would do more specialization so that in class, as a professor, you have passionate students. I think that's the type of environment we would end, because my experience, 4 years of general business school, there are times where I feel bored personally because the school would tell me to take certain subjects just for the credits. And I'm not saying that these subjects are not important. Of course, they are, but it's just not my personal interest. So I often use these AI tools because in my head, I don't see myself doing that job. I'm just doing it for the short term, for the grades, or just to get a passing score. So I guess for education, maybe we should be more specialized, because that's what people want, and that's what the job market wants as well. We're not hired as a generalist, I think. So I think we
Yeah,
what
interesting.
I
So
would
you kind of Yeah, so you're kind of saying like you kind of in a self-directed way using AI tools to kind of save time on things you're not so interested in order to prioritize the ones that you are interested in.
Yeah, so that's what I meant. It's like, of course, learning, it's like frustrating, and professors,
Yeah.
when you're in that class, I can imagine our bias, of course, is everyone in that class is very interested in our subject because they're in our class. Or sometimes we forget that maybe you're just here for a mandatory class. And that's why some professors in the US, they ask, hey, is this mandatory or do you want to be here? That's how they gauge the engagement
Mm-hmm.
rate. So that's what I would suggest. Because, yeah, I think that's what I would do, because that's what people are doing
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're right, and that's likely what's happening. I think as somebody whose job is kind of partially to be a guardian of your education and to make sure that students come out with the basics, even in subjects that they're not super interested in. Um, yeah, I'm still feel like we have a responsibility to help students make sure they still learn, even if AI tools might kind of provide a shortcut to the outcome.
I think it's like people would always learn. And just like what you said, if you're not interested or you don't see yourself working that role, you just learn the bare minimum. And somehow we somehow forget about those concepts because we won't use it in our job. I think that's what people have. But the cave cut is when you join an organization, you don't just work in one department, you also work with other departments. So I think it's the reason why business schools wanted has us to have a core subject. So I think we need to somehow balance those. So I
Hmm.
guess I think AI is good. So I became more self-aware on what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted versus what I think people want for me. Because it's like the
See? Yeah.
subjects I'm more interested in, I'm willing to take more of the pain. So it's like
Okay. Yeah.
you need to have some sort of self-reflection to know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I find I'm sometimes worried that I'm losing some of my skills if I'm using it too much, right? So I'm sometimes restricting my own AI use.
Mm,
So a really important part of my job is writing, for
yeah.
example, right? And so it's tempting to be like, oh, I can't find the right word. How do I say this? I'm trying to say this, and this. Just write it for me, right? So, but I feel like I need to continue practicing that skill, and I worry a little bit sometimes that I lose it if I rely too heavily on AI tools, and maybe you do something similar.
I guess I use AI for paraphrasing because English is not my first language. I guess
Same.
when I look back at my work before ChatGPT, when I look back, I was like, wow, can't believe I actually wrote that. I
Yeah.
sound like, wow, I can't believe that I wrote that. So I guess it's more about we sometimes forget our own potential, I guess. So when we hear about this AI tool saying they're going to get after our job, and as a young person, I don't have a job yet, so that's why I'm more scared. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think the more reason I should be learning. Unlike the middle managers and upper level, you have a job on their back, or they can afford to lose a job within 3 to 6 months because they have savings in place. So I guess, yeah, it's like the more reason young people should learn, but it's like harder because I guess in organization, there's like organizational safety. You need to feel safe enough to fail a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like
Yeah.
all you're hearing is AI is going after you, and it's harder to get a job now than before
Mm-hmm.
because the economy is slowing down. So it's
Yeah,
more
there's a couple
difficult
of different factors, right? So we kind of don't exactly know what's AI and what isn't, but yeah, no, you're right.
and it's like a lot of master's students are entering entry-level jobs that were traditionally only for undergrads. So some people are out there. There's this huge theory that's an indicator of this is just TikTok. This is not research, but people
Yeah.
believe in this
Okay.
thing.
What does it say?
I mean, this is what people believe. They might be wrong, but
Yeah.
the perception. So it's like, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And they say one of their indicator of a bad economy is when more people wanted a master's degree. They feel that a master's degree is preventing them from entering the workforce because it doesn't work in their favor. And the fact that we have master's students entering entry-level jobs, that's like concerning. And we can say to these companies, oh, don't do that. But as a company, why would you not like a master's student that's willing to be paid less over someone who has no experience? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
all these different factors and why young people in AI is like we're very scared. But anyway, we talk more about there's some skill sets that AI can somehow take away. It's not that AI takes it away. It's more of it's because you don't use it. I think that's my perception of it. It's like a muscle that if you don't
Yeah.
use it, you somehow lose the
Mm-hmm.
ability. And I
Yeah, I
don't
worry about that.
think that AI. I don't think it's like healthy that we just blame AI for everything. I guess we somehow need to take responsibility and upskilling. So there's this research by MIT saying that AI or people who are very dependent on AI. Their
Mm-hmm.
brain functions, their
Right.
MRI scans, there's
Mm-hmm.
less brain activity because they somehow offloaded their thinking or they
Mm-hmm.
somehow think that AI is a second brain. So it's like people are saying, oh, AI is making us dumb, or students, business school students who are known to be the dumbest. Like we're dumb relative to
What? Having
and
worked with business school students for 15 years, they one thing they're not is dumb.
if you go to TikTok and Instagram, people make these stereotypes of like business school kids that were just there making slides or yeah. So
Not
there's
been
this
my experience.
yeah, there's like this perception that AI is making us dumb in a
Mm.
sense that it tempts us to not keep using our skill because learning, upskilling is painful mentally, exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
slow. I see it like junk food in a way. So it's like what ways can people implement in their lives every day so that they can have this somehow mental fitness, if you will?
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So I've my understanding is of that MIT studies, like that's sort of a one-off working on the task, brain activation on the task study, right? So we don't really know what this will do longitudinally as people use it for years, because it's not been years since it's been around. We'll see in due course. Yes, so what can people do? That's a good question. So we have in a study that's not yet published, but we have some initial data where we looked at people's motivation for different tasks. I find that it's kind of a bit difficult to go back. So once you've used AI for a task that previously you did without it, then people's kind of motivation, kind of their intrinsic motivation, their sort of enjoyment and interest in that task sort of lower when they go back to it afterwards, because now they've seen how much better the AI is and how much quicker it is. So what can people do on what I'm trying to do is like to be quite disciplined about it, to maybe have some rules for yourself on how you do and don't use it. Maybe for the first draft, you don't use it. Maybe you can make some rules up for yourself, depending on what it is that you're doing. I talked a little bit already about how I'm trying to not use it too much for my writing so that I continue to sharpen those tools and work on those skills. Yeah, I think that. But again, it's a lot to ask, right? If it's just there and we get used to it, and that's just where we're using it really for work-related tasks, let alone for this kind of people chatting to it about everyday life decisions, which I think is going to be a whole other problem we'll have to deal with.
Yeah, there was like a lot of research saying on how people are treating ChatGPT as a free psychologist in a way, or they see it. I remember when the newest model, GPT-5, went out,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a change in his tone. It was more cool.
Right. People said they lost their friend, right? Yes. That's right,
Attack
that
of
too.
your friend or something, and I felt
Yes.
it as well. So I didn't realize on how we form an emotional connection to something that wasn't human. So I think it's more about in terms of work, what does it say about human connections? Because I remember when, like, for example, in our parents' time, to go dating, you need to meet people face to face. You need to learn how to have good communication skills or to pick up the phone. My generation, we have dating apps, we have the phone to just do face calls. So talking to strangers on the phone, it's
Yeah,
like
I
one
hate
of the,
that too, though. Like, totally, yes.
but it's like I would say our communication skills is already not as great compared to my parents. Because my parents, they can talk, communicate with everyone. But I guess just look at teenagers in a train station. We're all hunched down on our phones. So in terms of communication, in you like person interaction, we're not used to doing eye contact, or we're not using to say hi, hello, like those little things. It was not formed as a habit because of this technology. So it goes back to your point that the moment we use technology in a certain way, we don't really go back to it anymore. So I'm curious, with AI, what would that
Yeah.
look like a skill set? For example, kids, they can just,
Mm-hmm.
at least for us, we know what's it like to write an essay by hands. Like we used to do it
Mm-hmm.
in school or elementary. But now kids have iPads. They now use ChatGPT. They now talk to ChatGPT. So
Mm-hmm.
what way would that shape learning for them now?
That's a good question. So I'm not an educational psychologist. It's not my primary area of expertise. When I say one thing on the like, kind of not going back, I think like our relationship to the task we were initially doing without AI might never quite reset. But I don't know. I'm not in the business of predicting the future, but I
Yeah.
do sense that there's going to be a bit of a counter movement, right? The way that we're seeing that now with social media, right, where there's quite a bit of pushback now, a bit more awareness of the way it maybe does quite serious harm to young people, and we maybe shouldn't let them, loose on the internet from when they're quite little. So, and my sense is that eventually we'll come to a point like that with AI as well, where maybe we're kind of AI detoxing and sort of putting away our phones, and maybe
Yeah, I
reconnecting
remember
with a more
there's
offline world again.
yeah. I remember there's like a theory out there where they said that internet is dead, where they believe
I
that
don't know about that.
majority of,
Yeah.
because what happens was people stopped creating content. Like most of the
Ah,
models
yes. Okay, yeah, we don't
we
really post anymore, right? Yes,
don't
nobody
post
posts anymore. Mm-hmm.
like real people, because there's this AI models out there. So there's this belief that the internet is just recycled of everything. We're not creating new with it. Where
Mm.
some people believe social media is kind of dead in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that if you scroll through TikTok or Instagram, majority of the content is AI generated. So the way we look about this task on innovation, creativity, something we want our employees to be very
Mm.
good on, there's just look at social media, everything's AI generated. In a sense, we're getting more used to having socialization with AI. Because if we don't feel a connection to this content, why do we like it or subscribe to it? And there's YouTube
Yeah.
videos that are just AI generated. Everything's AI generated. The script, the videos, there's kid
Mm.
channels that are just AI generated. So in terms of business and organization,
Mm-hmm.
there's this belief that, hey, if AI can see the gaps in my thinking, AI can somehow be more innovative than me. How do you push innovation now in the world of AI?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Like I'm not sure. There's a lot in them. A lot to unpack, right? So that's indeed kind of everything's kind of AI slop. I'm like, yes, but do you maybe think that there would be like a premium placed on human generated content, and eventually that's kind of going to be just valued differently? Yeah, I'm sure your listeners are interested in you and the conversations you have, and would not have the same kind of connection to an AI. I'm assuming. Uh,
I mean, it's like there's models, and some brands like Puma, they had a AI model. So people treat these influencers as people somehow. Like they know it's not real person. So it's a growing
mm-hmm.
field in marketing that influencer, because before AI, influencer marketing is a huge thing. So everybody wants to
Mm-hmm.
be
Sure.
influencer, they get these brands. But now we're having AI generated models that look perfect or whatever
Mm.
the latest beauty standards are. You don't need to pay them. They don't eat. They don't complain. You just feed them and everything is like AI slop. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
is, AI is becoming very realistic that it's getting hard to know what's human or what's like AI. And people somehow form a connection to these AI slops. Like these
Yeah.
caricatures, they give them names. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. My sense is for these kind of, can you imagine listening to like an hour-long podcast between two AIs? I don't
Yeah.
know. And I feel like particularly with these kind of long forms, we form this like parasocial relationships with podcast hosts and we listen to them every week. We feel we know them as a person and we want to know their hot take on the latest whatever, right? So do know, maybe you're right that eventually we'll just sort of project the same kind of relationship onto an AI. But yeah, my hope, and I have nothing to support that, but my hope is that there'll be a premium on kind of human-generated content. And then your question on AI and creativity and innovation. So there are actually quite a few professors at ESSEC who study the kind of the collaboration, human AI collaboration around creativity. I'm not one of them, but I've heard them talk about it. In terms of the AI is going to be better at coming up with lots and lots of different solutions, right? There's no kind of, it has more to draw on. It doesn't get tired. I can see that. So if my question with all of that is that a measure we should be using? And as an organizational psychologist, to me, this is kind of not the question I'm interested in when I see their studies. I'm like, that's cool. That's interesting. Obviously, working with the AI, there's going to be more creative solutions that people come up with. But if you're thinking about a human, how do they feel about their creative tasks that maybe previously they did without an AI? How does it affect their motivation? Or does that affect their level of emotional exhaustion or engagement in their work? And what does that mean for their relationship with the organization? So to me, I'm like, that's kind of where it's at. So yes, the AI is going to come up with more creative solutions, but what does it mean for the person doing the job? I think is what my main interest would be.
Last question is, with all this AI and you've been in the research space for like more than 15 years, what are some of the things that you believe you need to unlearn in order to succeed in today's world?
Me personally?
Like, what are the skill set or some of beliefs that change over time? 'Cause I remember that your research, you said that our identity changes. Like, it's not set
Yeah.
in stone.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we can always switch jobs or everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, on 15 years of research, is there something
Mm-hmm.
about yourself that was
Mm-hmm.
different? Like you now,
Yeah.
like, you're different 15 years before. So it's like, what was like, it can be little things. It doesn't need to be
Sure.
drastic.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. I think so like how identity is changing and how AI is impacting that is actually, this is an ongoing project I have where we're actually starting to study how people kind of revise their future selves, so how they develop them over time. And then I think there are lots of interesting questions to be asked about, well, how do we how can that both be adaptive and change in response to changes in the environment, but also still have like a stable core and a sense of continuity where we feel like we're still, who we previously were and our dreams haven't dramatically changed. We're still the same person. And these future selves are not necessarily kind of a destination you arrive at. It isn't like, oh, now my future self, tick, right? So they're always evolving and so always a little bit ahead of us. Beliefs had to, I don't know, I think there's a lot of ways in which technology in general has already changed over essentially my entire career in higher education, what it means to be a professor. So when I went to university, professors would show up at the beginning of a lecture and would put down their script and then they would start reading it out to us and sit in the auditorium and take notes, right? That is not, I don't know if that's still happening somewhere, but it's certainly not what my job is today. Right. So this kind of transferring knowledge and being the expert that kind of hands knowledge out to the students, I think that's already long a thing of the past, right? You can get this information from whoever's done the study originally on a TED Talk or on their YouTube channel, or you can get that information somewhere else. You don't need to come to me for that. So what then is my role as a professor, and what's the added value that I bring and that ESSEC brings, right? So how can I still help students learning? And so my sense of that is, but it's essentially in the eye of the beholder, right? So one of the students agree with that it's so much more about the personal connection with students. And that's why I've enjoyed the course that, we did together so much. I love that course where where students work on, questions and topics that they're interested in. And then my role is really more to maybe help and guide them a little bit. And my favorite like moment in all of my teaching is when I see somebody have like a light bulb moment, where like they were struggling with a problem and trying to figure something out, and suddenly they kind of see this path open up in front of them, and they kind of see like a way they could take with their work, and it's like I can see their face change, and it's just the most rewarding, wonderful thing. Yeah, so I think already, right, I'm not the big dispenser of expertise, but my role really lies more in kind of guiding students in their own self-directed learning journey.
I'm just curious. I know this is supposed to be a lot, but I'm just curious. But yeah, but my question now is: we somehow agreed that we need to be more specialized because with AI, students already know. Okay, I'm not gonna be interested in this subject or invest less because I don't see myself doing it or I'm not interested in it. So I want to specialize in specific roles or tasks. And you see this like in your class when we do our own research questions. We struggle through thinking about it, but we're willing to because it's something that matters to us. And you said as a professor, you had this light bulb moment, and like finally there's like a light in the hole. I have all these ideas, and suddenly I realized this is my path. But then the thing is, how do we transfer that to general classes? Because I believe that's how your class was one of the things I like, is because somehow I have a direction of my learning and it matters to me. But then we have these core classes. It's like, how do we take some of those principles from research that we can apply to those boring or core classes to somehow make it more engaging?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or should we
So-
just lessen our core classes? Just be more.
No, I think while I agree that it's great when people are able to kind of be self-directed in what they want to learn, I think having the breadth of education that core classes provide is pretty essential. It's a good question. I always so in core classes I teach, I want students to be able to find something that they connect to and that's interesting to them. And it's less straightforward, right? And if you kind of you get to work on any kind of topic, and then my role is more in giving you the tools, right? But if it's more about, I don't know, the people and organization core course, for example, or I think it's called leading organizations in your program, right? There's certain things that like we want all of our students to know. We want them to know about, leadership and motivation, how teams work, what individual differences are, etc. Right? All of that is important. So how can we make students' learning still self-directed within that? And I think that's perfectly possible. And the answer is probably not. Here's my slide deck. Now let's have a group discussion about this question I already thought about. But there are lots of things that professors do and can do to make this more student-led and student-centric, right? So in how we set assignments, for example, in freedom, we give students to work on different topics within a course. Do you have some ideas for us? Like I'm about to speak to a lot of new ESSEC professors about, teaching at ESSEC. What should I tell them about our students? What message do you have for professors?
Because like I remember when I was in class, I didn't really appreciate the learning until I saw it in a job. And I didn't apply these principles. Like, for example, I know to myself, I'm not going to be in marketing. And yet when I do consulting projects, these are the problems that people face. The reason why they have less sales is because they have low brand awareness. So they need to up their marketing. So I guess we don't really appreciate things. Generally, we don't appreciate things unless it happens to us or experience it.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like HR, when I was young, people are saying, oh, HR is just this back office department that does make us do paperwork. They're kind of useless. But then when I interned in the bank, when I've seen AI, somehow this bank they created, it's not necessarily AI, but it's just a new system. So employees who are willing to be more flexible using the new system, of course, they do well in their careers. Those who have bad habits from their former organization, somehow they don't, or they're less willing to learn this new system, so they perform less better. So I guess I didn't appreciate it until I experienced it or I've seen it. And I guess this is where internships come in, but to make learning more complete. So for example, if I'm taking an HR class, I would rather have a guest speaker. I know every class has a guest speaker. Let's say you get a guest speaker and this guest speaker says, for my organization, let's say he's a German company. He's a German manager, and they open a new branch in Asia. So their problem now is organizational culture. What's the difference of a say Singaporean way of communication to a German boss? So Germans are more direct, they're more frank, but Singaporeans, even though they're efficient, they're more indirect in communication. Perhaps get a speaker that has a real problem connected to your course and let your students somehow do a competition. That's how you divide the class, let's say, into 5 groups, where it's somehow like a consulting project that, hey, what do you think? How would you assess this problem? Because this is a real problem. It's not a textbook case. So I would say a part of the class would be this core subjects like theory to understand. And the reason why it's important to me, like you said a while ago, the principles of learning. I think you were frozen for a little bit.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's like a while ago you talk about how the principles of learning is it needs to be somehow immediate, that is important. So in a class, I need to learn these principles because our professor will bring in a new client. That's a consulting project, and I need to be in groups and somehow think on how to solve that person's issues. And by doing these consulting projects, I learn things outside of the classroom because I need to help my client the most. And this is what the skill sets that we need in the job
Yeah.
is like continuous learning. You need to learn beyond the classroom. And I would care more because I'm presenting it to a real client who's facing a real issue. So I guess having more project-based subjects will be like very interesting for me because throughout my program, I learned the best with consulting projects. And I know people would say consultants are kind of useless, but I've learned a lot. And it's by talking to these people with their problems in their business day to day, I can like somehow apply these concepts. Because in an exam, after an exam, I somehow forget those concepts. But when someone tells me the problem, it somehow comes back. It somehow connects the dots. So if I was a student in an HR course, I would want to have at least a project. And I guess as a student, it would help me in my internship or my CV. We all know it's harder to get a job. So why not somehow do a project to show I can do the job and somehow be more interested in the class as well? So I think if I was a professor in ESSEC, you guys already have a guest speaker. It's something easy to implement because you have a guest speaker, or you can just do a mini competition. Because I love
many other classes are like that, right? So there's so what you're describing is a technical term for it's like flipped learning or problem focused learning, right? You start off with the case and then you're learning theories not for their own sake, but in order to understand what is happening in the case. It's also what people do in kind of medical school. Yeah, that's great. And it just gives it much more meaning, right? Just directly apply it.
And I feel like this is something AI can do. Like AI can give you suggestions, but it's not perfect. And I think this is where innovation or problem solving comes. Because, for example, AI can give you the context of these are the solutions, but is that applicable to, let's say, the Asian market or the EU? So it's like, this is the reason why ESSEC is great because we're talking with people from different cultures and you're solving problems together. And I somehow believe it connects with the mission of ESSEC, where you're solving world planet problems, where you said that we're learning by doing. I think that's the core of ESSEC. My thinking is why wait till the internship sessions to do that? It's like, why can we do that in our learning? Because we have like 10 sessions and 10 sessions is 3 hours. And as a student, I don't want to be sitting down 3 hours straight. I learn more by walking around, talking, solving a real issue. So if that's something, somehow we can implement that in ESSEC, that'd be great.
I think a lot of courses are in fact like that. But I think it's really, really great to hear that that's what you think would work. Yeah. So I know this is your podcast and you're asking the questions and you announce it's the last question, but here's another question for you. How do we feel about professors using AI?
I mean, for me, I have nothing against it because as a student, I use it to, for example, for my thesis, I have a general idea. This is my outline and AI somehow makes it. I just ask AI, oh, this is my schedule. Give a suggestion how I can work on my thesis daily. Like give me like mini tasks, and I know that if I have a huge slide and I have, let's say, only 10, 15 minutes to talk about it, I can use AI to somehow help me time manage And
Mm-hmm.
professors use it as well. And I have nothing against it. I don't understand this war between students and professors with AI. I think those often happens is when there's no communication or it's just one-sided, or when, let's say, in a company your boss does something without your input, or you don't understand how it's going to impact you,
Mm-hmm.
you have an issue with it. It's like
Mm.
authoritarianism. So
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
before, when you said on how professors used to be this low behold authority of knowledge, and you need to like listen to me because I'm the only
Mm-hmm.
authority. I don't think professors, at least in ESSEC, I don't think that's how professors are. So
No,
when they
we're not
use
like that. That's true.
AI, it's fine. Like for example, I have a lot of readings. I
Mm-hmm.
often use AI to make them into a recording or a podcast because I'm more of an auditory learner. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
like podcasts or listen to videos, because I can't read through a bunch of text. It's just not how I learn. So that's how I adopt. So AI helps professors adopt to different ways their students learn. So if I'm a professor, I like to read text, I can put this into an AI that does into a podcast for students that are more of auditory learner. And what's
Mm.
interesting is I did this for a finance course.
Yeah.
For finance, we had this huge textbook with all these concepts,
Mm-hmm.
and reading through the pages, I just know there's no way I can do this. And our professor gave us a podcast snippet.
Mm-hmm.
So he uses AI. And he encourages us to use AI. And of course, we have these mini exams, but the reason why I brought up the consulting project is I learned how to apply and to build
Mm-hmm.
my own financial models is when I joined a competition. I didn't win the competition because I'm not the best in finance, and I was competing with SMU and US, like the top schools in
Mm-hmm.
Singapore. But my point
Yeah.
wasn't to win. My point of doing the competition is like to learn. And I've learned so much more than the class because it was a
Yeah.
competition. So
Mm-hmm.
my point is, if you don't have a real case study for your speaker, you can create a competition, or you can ask other schools that, hey, can we do a mini case competition? Somehow that can be graded so that our students learn together, or we just compete. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think learning happens by just doing exams, because majority of the time there's this, as a student, we have this take in, take out mentality of, I'm going to take in
Mm-hmm.
all this knowledge and cram it. And after the exam, I'm just going to dump it out.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's such a waste of doing that. We're not helping each other. If we can apply this to a real
Mm-hmm.
problem, or not, it doesn't have to be real. You can just do a case study competition. Because
Yeah.
for our finance competition I joined, it was not a real company. They just gave us this fictional scenario, and they just made us
Mm.
go into groups and create slides and say, okay, how would you approach this problem? And I guess
Mm-hmm.
as a professor, it's going to be interesting because people are just creative on what
Mm.
they're going to think about and how their approach. Maybe you're going to be surprised of how young people think, or you can also see the gaps in the knowledge. Like
Mm.
I told my professor that, oh, if I were to do this competition again, I hope I would have learned more about these concepts. So if
Mm-hmm.
I were to just 3 hours of lectures 10 times, then you ask me what my feedback was, like it's really hard. Unless, for example, you do a case study together or a
Yeah.
competition,
Mm-hmm.
I would know
Mm.
what type of professor you are, in a sense, what type of leader you are. Did you guide me? Or were you like kind of frustrated when I asked stupid questions or little questions? So I guess it encourages students to be more creative, and it also encourages professors to be more of this leadership role. So I guess it helps more. So
Like many of my colleagues, like we prefer teaching cases, right? It's much more fun for us to have a discussion with students, to exactly as you say, see how they're thinking, and it's also a deeper form of learning, right? So there's kind of like, are we memorizing, and then we kind of repeating that in the exam. Yeah, I think everybody agrees that that's not like the high value of education.
like I would say for case studies, some people feel bored about it because you just see it as like a reading. But then
Mm-hmm.
if you do a case study that's like a competition, or a real person's, this is a company's real problem, how would you face it? And it became more real to me is when I met my
Yeah, that's more
clients.
meaningful, right? Mm-hmm.
When I
Yeah.
met them face to face,
Mm-hmm.
telling not a piece of paper saying, "Oh yeah, this is the issue." Like I'm here face to face telling you, "This is who I am. I started this company, and this is the problem I'm facing." In a sense, it humanizes the experience. So
Yeah,
I'm more
exactly.
emotion involved because
Yeah.
I know I'm not paid because this is like just a school project, but somehow I'm involved on what's the best way I can do. And I guess this is how we are in connection with work. I would say
Mm-hmm.
naturally we're cooperative. I think it's our default nature. So if people started becoming not cooperative, I think it's not I. That's my hypothesis. I think there's just
Mm.
something in the organization culture that
Mm.
made people do that. Because I think our status quo is being cooperative. Because I remember in my class, there are some people I didn't talk too much because they're from a different nationality or their native tongue is different from mine. So, of course, we tend to be in groups. But then doing these projects and realizing how different cultures work, may be more empathetic to others,
Mm.
and it may
Mm-hmm.
be more of a better problem solver that okay, this is the problem I'm facing, this is what the client is saying. I have, you see, Brazilians, Germans, Americans, the way they work is different. How do I manage a team together with everything? So we learn about teamwork, team formation, but how does it
Mm-hmm.
apply? You won't appreciate it until like it's there in your face that the Germans are more direct, but then the Brazilians and I myself are indirect, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
somehow felt hurt that it's better if he somehow changed his tone, or we also adopt that okay, if an Americans and Germans are more direct, they might feel frustrated that we're beating around the bush. So maybe it's better if we're just more direct
Mm.
towards them.
I
So
see.
we learn from each other.
Working skills that you also get. But so to just like follow up on so what you said about the seeing the client, etc. We know that that's what makes work meaningful, right? When it has an impact on the lives of other people, and of course that would also apply when you're studying. When it's like what I'm doing here has a relevance to this organization and to this manager, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so I guess it's more about it's not really the competition I was doing. It was fun because it's a competition, but it's the
Yes,
fact
I
that
take it
it
you're
was.
quite competitive. I've learned that about you.
But it's more about I want to have somehow an impact, and I didn't realize this until it was in my face. Like before
Mm-hmm.
ESSEC, I thought I was just into finance, but it wasn't until I was in a bank that I realized, you know what, HR was interesting because I saw it, I heard around it. So it's more about we have core subjects,
Yes.
and I
So
might
there's
say,
some value in hearing different things, not just the things you think you'll
yeah.
initially be interested in.
Because, like, for example, a while ago we talked about on how we use AI to
Mm-hmm.
offload to this boring task for us. But then,
Mm-hmm.
if we were put into an environment that humanizes the problem, I might realize that you know what, maybe I might not be an HR professional, but I enjoyed and I somehow see the value in it. I would, I, am a firm believer of this because I heard people like I see them face to face, like "Oh, I hate this job," or I'm scared because my one of my
Yeah.
friends in this department got laid off. So those principles of motivation or hygiene factors that's
Mm-hmm.
organizational safety it somehow came to back to me. And it was like
Mm-hmm.
in my face. You need to be somehow ignorant not to see it. So I would say more project based, not just
Mm.
case studies, because case studies is somehow in a book that people can search online or ask chat how to solve this. But
Yes, we
I
know they
guess it's
do.
like, yeah. So it's like if it humanizes, so if you have a guest speaker and it doesn't need to be a big project. It
Mm-hmm.
can just be a small project. And I think one of the best things that I've learned is when I did this project is to presenting it to the client. That is
Mm-hmm.
what made it interesting for me. And the client asked questions. So we have the academic sphere and the business case that oh, your business, your idea might be great, but how do we exactly implement it in a business sense?
Mm-hmm.
Or clients would sometimes ask, what's the cost of it? And we often don't realize this in HR. Like HR activities or marketing activities, it has costs, but we didn't realize the budget aspect until the client asked for it. So it's like we have these broad subjects, but having a client, you somehow connect those subjects and it somehow becomes alive. And I didn't realize my interest in it until I experienced it, or it was in my face. So I guess there's a lot of guest speakers that go to class. I mean, sometimes bored because they often go and just talk about their experience and everything. But I'm like, hey, it's already like 5:30. I have an exam that I need to study. Like, I don't need to be sitting here listening to you about your career. But then if you come here and say, this is what I've been doing, I have this new project I want to work on. What are your guys' ideas? And you
Yeah.
somehow make it a competition. I know I keep saying competition, but
No,
somehow,
like, you know.
or yeah,
Oh,
and to know that you're saying ideas not just for the sake of grades. It's
yeah.
because the bias of students is, okay, what's this professor like? What are the questions or answers she somehow responds the best to?
Favorite thing, right? When we get the sense of like, I sometimes get the sense of like, when students are sort of saying something because they think that's what I want to hear. It's like, no, I'm asking you for your thoughts. You feel very welcome to disagree with me. But yeah, totally.
To remove that aspect is
Mm-hmm.
pick or a client that they have no personal connections to,
Mm-hmm.
and it's to know that what they're doing is not for the grade. Like a client can give bad remarks or whatnot, but you as a professor, you're not teaching them how to be employees, you're teaching them how to learn. So you can say, you know what, the client may not like your idea, but I see your potential, so I can still give you a good grade. So it's like those dynamics, but I don't know the logistics of how it's gonna work. I'm just thinking about the logistics, but that's where I learned the best, I would say, as a student. But how often can I do this? Maybe not every semester. So maybe like 2 or 3 projects or is good enough. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you can like experiment it. But IDEA program was good. So IDEA program is where I study in different countries, and while studying I do consulting projects as well. And this is how I learned the best. So of course I put them in my CV, but for me my learning and dealing with clients mean more than whatever I put in my piece of paper. And the thing was, we weren't put into a criteria if you say certain things. I think my criteria became if the client somehow felt that we solved their issue, that was like a win for me. It can't be put into a scale. It's like the feeling. It's a sense of accomplishment that I
Yeah.
somehow contributed
Mm-hmm.
to.
Yeah, it's meaningful. Mm-hmm.
Why is that we can't just implement some of those concepts in the program in our everyday classes? Because this is how I learned the best. So if more students, or if I had this experience in the first year, then I would have done something else, or my experience with education will be more personalized.
Yeah.
That's what I
Thanks for
think.
sharing that. Yes, it's given me some really. So I use a lot of guest speakers and kind of case studies in my class, but I've gotten some concrete ideas from this for a course I'm currently designing. So I'm very excited to put some of your
Yeah,
ideas
just
into
like
action.
my guest speakers, I prefer if they have like an issue and they ask us before.
Yes, I share you a sense of like sometimes there's a lot of telling us your life story, and when I bring a guest speaker in, I usually have like a really concrete thing I want them to talk about. I'm like, okay, so here are my learning objectives for the class. I'm bringing this person in because they face this specific situation, and that's what I want them to talk about. And then I want the students to kind of think about it in terms of that theory. So often professors put quite a bit of thought into like how they use a guest speaker, but then they're human, and sometimes a guest speaker will start talking, and they're like, yeah. I've also been there.
So it's like, yeah, just like what you said about learning, it needs to be connected to something that's
Yeah.
important, or
Yeah.
make it more meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
If they have an issue and I can contribute and share my ideas, because sometimes the client can challenge us. The client can say that's a great idea, but I don't think we can implement it because these factors that I didn't know. And the thing is, for academics, we sometimes use terms or jargons that we sometimes forget that clients don't understand because they're not in that academic sphere. So we need to understand communication skills. Okay, this is how we communicate academically in school. You have these jargons, you have these concepts, but what way do we explain it to a client, these concepts, without making them feel dumb for not knowing the terms? I think that was one of the key learnings I had faced, because when, of course, as a student, we thought the more technical or jargons we use, the higher or smarter we are, but it doesn't work like that in the real world. So I've learned more learning by doing, basically. And it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things why I joined ESSEC, because it's part of the learning. And that's the reason why I did the IDEA
Absolutely.
program, because it's like part of the learning. So sometimes I talk to my friends and I say, this is amazing. Like I'm learning these things. I didn't realize I like
Mm-hmm.
HR. I thought I was just a finance person, but I didn't realize how important it was. And I'm just sad that they didn't have this experience, because my friends are also smart. Sometimes I felt disheartened as well when they say, "Oh, I just crammed for an exam." This thing with learning is just cramming, but you didn't apply it, or you didn't learn how to apply it to real life. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
case study, like bring in like a consultancy type project, really
Mm-hmm.
helped me a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but it sounds like you're having a really good experience at ISAC. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I learned a lot. It's more about the program. And I'm talking about the IDEA
Mm-hmm.
program because that's what I'm in. And I've learned the most. I remember in finance class, I told my professor, like the first day, I understood almost nothing. They were speaking
Mm-hmm.
financial jargons, and I didn't have a financial background.
Mm.
And he said, don't worry, the more you surround yourself with these people, the more you understand. But for me, I'm like, no, it doesn't work for me that way. So that's the reason why I joined the competitions. I learned that
Mm-hmm.
this is how I solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be in time pressured. I need to be in a project or competition somehow, some way. And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
was able to learn. And I was learning concepts beyond the class, learning how to use Excel for a finance course. And that was not part of our module.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, I need to learn it because I'm in this competition somehow. And it's funny because this competition, they only ask us $25 per team. So by putting myself in a situation where I spent $25, so I need to be invested in this. Like, it was crazy knowing the amount of research and work
Mm-hmm.
and learning I've done just for $25. And I realized on how my professor really is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, as a professor is different, but if he was to be my boss and I'm his employee, what's his dynamic like? Because people
Mm-hmm.
are different in like different scenarios. And that's when I realized, he's really a good professor or a mentor, because even though I was asking finance questions, he was really telling me, oh, this is how to look at it. And he was like patient,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't take the
Mm-hmm.
learning away from me. In a sense, he made me build my own models.
Mm.
Because, for example, in accounting class, the professor will just give the Excel sheet.
Yeah.
But I learned
Mm-hmm.
modeling. I've learned all these terms. I've learned to read a financial statement. And I didn't learn that in class. We have
Mm-hmm.
accounting classes, but it was more real to me because it was
Mm-hmm.
a real case in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like a really special experience. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So I hope we have more of this aspect. If I were to go back to ASEC like first year,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that this is how I learn, I would go
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just learn by doing so, or we learn by shadowing someone.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, I don't really have a script. I
Right.
just talk about what was the latest thing. Let me think
Oh, that's
about it.
good.
When was the last time you learned something new? Because like a while ago, we talk about
Yeah.
identity and changing.
Yeah, like learning new things is such an important part of my job. So just earlier today, so you had mentioned you might want to talk sort of about, AI applications in HR. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna, this is not research I do myself a lot of. I'm gonna look at what's out there. And so I found a very interesting paper, and then I read that paper and I learned so many new things in doing that. So just earlier today. Sorry?
Do you want to share about what
Sure.
was?
Yeah, yeah. I like now that I've learned it. So this is a paper that's come out last year in the journal Human Resource Management, and it's by a group of Australian researchers. So largely from the University of Queensland, and then was somebody from the University of New South Wales. And they were looking at algorithmic HR and the effect it has on employees, and specifically the effect it has on employee motivation. And so when they say algorithmic HR, they looked at two different aspects of it. One was essentially using digital tools to monitor performance and compare it to standards and goals, and then sort of automate feedback based on that, and using it to make decisions. So essentially if you're above this threshold, you get a bonus or a promotion. And so they looked at how it affects employees' motivation. And when we say motivation, you might notice, right? So there's different types of motivation. There's extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. And so why do we put effort into our job? Is it because we want to get financial rewards? So we're worried about, losing our job? Or are we putting effort into a job for more intrinsic reasons because we find it really interesting or enjoyable? And what they find is essentially that these algorithmic HR systems impact both types of motivation depending on why employees think they're being used. So particularly the kind of more performance monitoring one had an impact on extrinsic motivation. So it made people more focused on kind of rewards and kind of job security when employees thought the company was using them to monitor them, when they thought, oh, this is in place so that managers know what I'm doing.
Right.
And that matters because extrinsic motivation then has downstream consequences. So it makes people feel more emotionally exhausted in their work. And it also results in people kind of deprioritizing behaviors that aren't monitored and measured. Froze there for a second. Can you still hear me? Right. So it leads people to deprioritize behaviors that aren't the focus of the performance monitoring, right? But they might be really important still. So things like helping out coworkers when they're struggling with a task. You're not being measured on that, but still it's really important to help the organization work well. But people were more intrinsically motivated when they thought that these systems are there to help them learn and develop. And then that in turn kind of led to more intrinsic motivation and had a kind of decreased emotional exhaustion, and people were still doing these kind of non-measured behaviors. So it's kind of depends on why employees think these AI systems are in place. So do they think this is to kind of monitor and control them or to help them learn? And it's kind of like a bit like it's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. All depends on how employees make sense of it. Yeah, so that's something new I learned today.
It's one of my guest speakers, whole business with all of this AI agentics, they really love to target HR. So I asked, right, how do they work? And they said, oh, HR would just give us their KPIs. So I guess the default of AI is they're very external or performance based because machines can't learn emotions. They just learn by numbers. So HR will just give them a scale that, oh, if they somehow reach this number, they get a bonus or something. So I'm somehow curious on maybe these AI agents are perpetuating extrinsic values. Like they're just making this performance based work like worse. And it somehow goes against the point of using AI because AI is supposed to make us more efficient or more innovative, but somehow it's making us less innovative, or in a sense that we don't want to take risk because we're afraid of failing. So maybe
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. So where companies were using these systems and employees thought, oh, this is just there to motivate. You're right. It had a negative effect on, their well-being, on their kind of extra role performance. And so ultimately not great, right?
Yeah.
But you raise an important point with the numbers, right? So I think this is a broader issue with performance management and kind of performance reviews. And so we assign these things numbers, but they're essentially based, this at some point has been either colleagues or a manager rating and giving this person a number out of 5 on how efficient they were on this project or whatever, right? So it kind of creates this veneer of, it looks so scientific because it's numbers and metrics, but behind it is human judgment. And we know from research on performance management that actually that performance ratings say a lot more about the person rating than about the person rated. It's called the idiosyncratic rater effect. So if I'm, say, grading students, then these grades are much more a reflection of how I tend to grade in general than of each student's individual performance. So for example, in a more positive setting, right? So when managers were asked to rate how proactive an employee was, then their rating was actually more strongly related to that manager's own kind of tendency to be proactive than to the employee. So yeah, obviously, it's just a human taking the best guess they can, but it creates this impression that it's objective because it's numbers. That's what happens.
It's kind of hard because I remember when doing our project like consulting projects, and I'm working with people from different cultures, so their idea of a good job means different things. Like, for example, Germans are always on time, so timeliness or their perception of time is different. So let's say the Brazilians or the Filipinos, where we're more laid back. We have a Brazilian time or Filipino time where it's okay to be like 15 to 30 minutes late. It's acceptable, but I imagine for the German work culture, they're more on time. I know it's a
Yeah.
stereotype, but it's like,
I know, but so I'm Austrian, but so that also means it's Germanic culture essentially. It's very kind of similar country, but it's true. I've lived in kind of this the third different culture I live in, but still I'm like I cannot shake it. I'm like almost like 3 minutes early, and then the French people show up at some point after sort of 10 minutes or
if you're
so.
5 minutes early, you're considered late. And this was like
That's
the
correct.
Joker. It's like the Joker on the Germans. It's like if I'm 5 minutes early, I'm late. But yeah,
Yes.
it's like our perception of what's timeliness is different for
Mm-hmm.
cultures. And it's like, how do I put that in an AI agent? AI agent will that culture,
Well, I don't know. You can probably tell it. You can probably tell it behave like a German. It's going to be the 3 minutes early.
I don't know. Like
It's
it
also
was
going to give you really direct feedback.
because like I remember I have some professors here in FGV, and some of them lived in Germany for a long period of time. And I said, "Oh, you're German, ha ha!" Like, and they make a joke on how, "Oh, I'm not that German. I'm still funny." It's like this stereotype. This that Germans have no sense of humor. That it's like for the business case, we have this subjective things like being cooperative, being on time, or well behaved, or a very cooperative team player. But that means different things to different people. Like, what does it mean to be cooperative? Or like, for example, when we do a meeting, some cultures are very A, B, C, D. This is the list. We follow the list. Other cultures, like, you know what? I think we can go from A and we go from D and go to C. And I think there's different ways of working, and it's always been an issue. But now with AI, it's like, which culture does his data set based on? That's what is asking. Because I think it's more Western. I think that's my bias because AI agents are American, I think. Because these huge AI machines were trained on data by Americans or Westerners because they have more data. So I remember I asked my dad, like, how do you know if this what was written was by AI or by human or someone from my culture, like Filipino? And it's interesting. He said, "Oh, it's too Westerner." Like the style of
Yeah.
writing. It's too
Yeah.
Western.
It's got to tell.
I can tell, like, if you tell me a white guy wrote this, like, I'll believe you. So it's really interesting where this sense of communication, we can see like the culture, the choice of words, the way the sentence was structured. I would know that, okay, at least in Asia, if it sounds kind of Western or those choice of
You can
words,
tell it's the
I can say it's AI. But if I'm a Westerner and I use
Mhm.
those words, those sentence structure, it's like it's harder, I would say.
Yeah, it's very hard. I feel like there are some tells still. I can often tell with my students. So I'm like, I hear you guys speak in class. And I've never heard you use the word delve in person before. Yeah, but I can see that's really interesting. I've not thought of that. But yeah, that
So
it kind of has a bit
that
of a
was
cultural bias.
so it's like with AI, you said a while ago we're using AI for HR. What is the bias of performance for that? Or which like for example, if you're like what's the standard? Like how do you put a standard knowing different cultures see things differently? Like because like some people are saying maybe we'll just have different AI agents for different cultures. That's not
Yeah, and it's maybe easier to adapt than it is humans, right? So if I think about a human manager working across different cultures, much more difficult for us to kind of switch on different kind of communication styles in different cultures. Maybe this is easier to set with an AI. Yeah, I'm assuming that they can be adapted to different cultural
I
contexts.
don't know
Or
about
maybe
AI.
yeah,
It's just like
not yet.
imagining if I'm facing something at work, I would want to talk with a human being.
Oh, that absolutely. Sort of that isn't even a sort of HR tools that can help employees give each other feedback. And so you just essentially give it a few keywords and then it writes out a paragraph and you can send that to your colleague. I'm thinking, I mean, yes, but is that as meaningful? I think that sometimes students send me an email after the course to kind of maybe they say something nice about the course or to share some sort of reflection on it. And I treasure these emails. And sometimes they've used a kind of AI to help them write it, and they're still meaningful to me. But when it really feels like I hear the student's voice and the student kind of has taken the time to write their own words, and even if there's some mistakes in it, it feels much more meaningful. So I doubt that AI can make us kind of feel seen and appreciated in the way that a human manager can.
So like I remember in some companies when some employees are about to leave, of course you don't want to burn bridges. They write handwritten notes. So I think it's more personalized. I think there's more research where if you make something by hand, that gift is somehow more meaningful than just buying a gift for someone, because there's this human element as well where sure, you didn't create a paper from scratch, but you created this masterpiece, this origami or this painting for me. So this sense of personalization is important. I think it's like what's human.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess with work, I would like to work with people. Like I'm going to work. I don't think people go to work for the job. I think people go for the work for the people.
Yeah, do you know, maybe a bit of a mix, right? I think for me it's a bit of both, but definitely about the people. So yeah.
This is like you already know you're in HR, so you're always gonna be in that role. So in a company, you're being with people. Because like when I was asked what company you're looking at, you often see this image of an institution or a building, but you sometimes forget that joining companies, you're joining a company of people. I guess that's why a company is called a company. It is this human element.
Yeah,
We're messy. We
that's
can't
true.
really be put into clean data, even though research gets it. But yeah, it's like
That makes sense. Yeah, so when we see that the way I study future selves now is so often we study them by asking people how they see themselves in whatever 5 years or so, which, I mean, who wants to answer that question? It's the sort of thing you ask in it. Yeah, right. This is like, you're like, ugh, am I talking to HR here? And you kind of, then you feel like, okay, now I have to say something kind of convincing that makes sense. And also maybe, I don't know, right? Could be. And so now I study future selves differently, but it's a kind of a little bit more open and doesn't require people to tell this single story. And in fact, yes, check out my TEDx talk on that topic. So essentially, we have people choose all of the different hopes and aspirations they have for their future. And they sort of choose from a pool. And you don't have to write a story, you just choose them, and then we ask you some questions how they relate to each other, and then we do a visual representation of that, where you can see how all of the different things you imagine for the future connect to each other, which I think very fun. But what kind of connects to what you just said about it's about people, so much of that is about relationships. So much of how people imagine their future self is not about like, oh, my promotion, I'm going to work for this company, I'm going to be this. It's about like, these are the relationships I'm going to have at work, but also with people outside of work. This is such an important part of, who we are and want to be.
That visual board, what you're saying, is a and in Pinterest and in Instagram, where you put what most people do is they put quotes or words that mean the most to them.
Yeah.
And they put a collage of where they want it to be and the type of life they want, and they see it every day. And people somehow say, oh, I manifested this life. But I was like, maybe, okay, they somehow put it in the practical sense, like spiritual sense. But for me, it's like maybe because you foreseen your future self living that, you do everything to make it to a reality.
Yeah, and so it guides your decision making, right? And so it kind of continues to motivate you, and you have it. And I think, I mean, not to disagree with if people want to believe that they've manifested something because the universe has given it to them because they had it on the Pinterest, each to their own. But psychologically, it might also have an effect on how you behave and make decisions, and so that might have helped the universe do its magic.
Really interesting is when these people talk. They say when you write this letter to yourself of your perfect life, you need to write it as if you've already done it. That was like really interesting for me. Watch all of this. I know you might not believe in this spiritual or astrology, but what's really interesting for me is they all said the same thing, where you need to believe and you say it as if you've already done it. So You just
That's
keep on.
interesting. Yeah, well, I have an ongoing study with a research group at the University of Venice where we essentially study that. So we have people describing their future self and they're kind of looking back and kind of our senses. We're still analyzing the data, so I don't want to kind of say too much, but our kind of sense is that there's kind of value in also having in mind the struggle it took to get there. So that it isn't just about like, oh, I'm indulging in a sweet, sweet fantasy where my life is perfect, but it is like, oh yeah, my life looks perfect now, but it took a lot to get there. So there might also be some value in that. But yeah, still analyzing that data. So watch that space.
There's a joke where people always congratulate you when you're pregnant, but they didn't realize how many times you've been F over. Like that's a joke, but it's true in success, right? Like
Sure.
you already
Yeah.
reached the top, but they didn't we often don't hear about the struggles you've done and to reach that goal. And I guess
Yeah.
as a student as well, because I know I'm quite ambitious. And when I didn't reach, I don't know what a goal, it seems small, but at that moment, like, oh, I didn't reach that. Why? But sometimes it takes reflection as well to look back and see how far we've gone. It's like, it's self-awareness. Like, okay, let's just do the game. It's just a 1 minute
Okay.
game.
Good. I
I
will
want to think about it.
try to not be competitive about the game. Is it a game I can win? Because I too am very competitive.
You're not the first person to ask me this. Like, I have another professor. He's also from ESSEC, who asked me like, "Oh, how many questions did other people were able to answer?" And I was
Oh,
like,
is it about being fast? No, I'm not gonna be
it's
good
not
at
about
that. I'm
being
gonna be like
fast.
overthinking everything.
Like for me, I wasn't. I was not keeping score, so I just said, "Oh, you're the
Okay, good.
fastest" or
Won't focus on
something.
that.
It's,
Okay.
it's just for fun. So let me know
Okay.
when you're ready, then we can start.
Okay, but it's about being fast, yeah? Just
It's
like,
not about being
okay.
fast. It just answer random questions in 1 minute. It's just for fun. It's
All
not.
right, fair enough.
It's okay. So first question is one thing you always forget.
Putting the bins out.
I think it's everyone's least favorite
Is
task.
it? Okay.
So it's like, so the next question is favorite ice cream flavor.
Hazelnut.
Ooh, that's so good. Where do you buy it? The hazelnut ice cream.
Yeah, this is specialized and hard because I'm vegan, so even more difficult to find.
Do you make it yourself or you just buy it?
I did.
The favorite part of your day.
The morning. I'm a morning person.
Most used app.
Ooh. Oh, it might be Duolingo. That little owl
Duolingo?
has me like controlled.
Language we're learning now for Duolingo.
French and Spanish. So French because I live in France and practicing, and yeah, so Spanish as well.
A holiday you'd like to celebrate more.
Oh, I'm a big Christmas person. Also being Austrian and coming from that culture, Christmas is huge for us. We do Christmas really
Christmas
well.
is so good there. Like it's one of the best
Yeah,
destinations
right? It's
to
magical.
go. Sorry for the French. I think you guys have a better Christmas over there. Last question is a song title that describes your life.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It sounds like this is the harder questions we got.
Yeah.
You can make it up. Like it doesn't need to be a real song.
Oh, no, I can think of the song, but I don't remember its title. So we're going to have to look it up. So it starts with, so it used to be the title of like this really quirky Canadian TV series I used to watch when I was at university, maybe. It was called Being Erica. And it's about like this woman who goes through some mental health struggles, figuring out who she is. And the first few lyrics are, it's clearer inside of me who I will always be. Deep at the something of my heart, maybe. Yeah, it's sort of a song about like the journey of self-discovery, etc. I don't feel that represents me musically. I listen to much cooler music than that, but that probably most closely describes my life.
And I guess I can really see what made you interested in organization culture. Like, is it
Yes, right.
self-discovery, identity? It makes sense now.
Yes, research is research. These are the themes of my life: self-discovery and how we, who we want to become. It's exactly.
But you can always change. So you can change your next song. Who knows? You can have like a rock song next time. Like you really don't. So thank you, Professor, for being here. It's so good to see you again.
Yes, and you.
It was like a year. It's like more than a little bit. When was the last time we saw each other in class? It's like
it would have been in March, I think. 6 months.
Like it's 6 months. I don't know. I don't know maths right now. But thank you so much, Professor.
Feels
for
like
being
longer.
here.
My pleasure.
Is there something that you're working on, like a research, and how can people help contribute? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. So people can follow me on LinkedIn, I guess. I'm not super active on social media, but yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn or on the internet in general. Check out my TEDx talk on how to unlock the power of your future self. And you can also go to my website to try out the future self tool that I talked about that helps you visualize how your different hopes and aspirations for the future fit together. And that is at futureworkself, all one word, .com.
Thank you, everyone, for being
Thanks
here.
so
Thank you so much, Professor, for being here. And
My
for our
pleasure. Really good to
listeners,
see you, Justin.
thank you so much, Professor.
Take
And
good care.
thank you for our listeners, and see you in our next episode. Bye.